My name is Sakura Saunders, and we're here with Vision on TV at the Rebellious Media Conference in London, England. I'm here with Patrick Chalmers. Hello, Patrick.
Sakura, hi.
And I met Patrick at one of the sessions that we had, Meet the Radical Media Makers. And I was very interested to hear about Patrick's past and also what he's doing today. But I'm going to start with the past, and then we can get into what he's doing today. So, you used to be a gold mining, or just a mining correspondent for a mainstream newspaper, is that correct?
I was. It was worse than that, Sakura. I was the bullion correspondent, so the precious metals correspondent for Reuters news agency in London between September 97 and maybe 99, so 2 years from September 97. And I was writing about the gold market. There was a little bit of gold mining equities, so mining companies, gold companies, but it was mainly about the gold price and the minute by minute, second by second movement in the gold price and the whys and so on with that.
So that's very interesting. So why do you say it's worse than that? I'm curious.
Why do I say it's worse than that? You were asking me if it was for a newspaper and on corporations, you know, the mining companies. That one mining company, one newspaper is one thing. I was writing effectively about all the mining companies for all of the newspapers. Reuters is a global news agency. It's a wholesale supplier of news, and it's for the gold market. It's one of the most important sources of news. The Bloomberg is important as well, but it has bureaus all over the world, in the mining capitals of the world, places like Perth, Western Australia, wherever it would be in Canada. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. Toronto now. All the big centers of gold trading, gold equities, and in the developing countries, the poor countries where gold mining is taking place as well. Reuters is in all of those places.
So what did you learn during your time as a correspondent on these issues?
It's really difficult to be a reporter of the gold market. It's sort of known as one of the friendlier markets for journalists. You know, it's quite a tight bunch of people, the traders and the equities analysts and the rest, but it's small and they all know each other, and it's really complicated, and you rely on these people to write anything about the story. So what did I learn? I learned about complicated financial instruments. I learned about how financial markets work. I learned about how difficult it is to get any really profound insights into them as a journalist. I learned how frustrating it was to cover one end of a story, which was the financial markets, and not the other end, which was the mines. So I learned tons of stuff. I also learned about credit derivatives, which were the things that blew up the financial crisis, the global financial crisis. They started out in markets like the gold market. Very complicated, very opaque, very difficult as a reporter or anyone, human being, to get any idea about who's doing the business, for whom they're doing it, or understand anything about the effects of that business on the gold price, but also on any number of other things.
So this is a little bit of a side, but these things, derivatives, complicated financial mechanisms, things like that, while they're still just as complicated and hard to communicate, they are getting more popular attention due to these rounds of financial crises met with bailouts. I'm just curious about what your opinion is of, you know, of course, all the bailouts, and also the various Occupy movements. Occupy Wall Street. Next week we're going to occupy London. What is your take on all that?
I think it's pretty exciting that people are beginning to understand how critically important this stuff is. Our governments have given away billions, in fact trillions of dollars, whichever currency you choose, to banks, which took massive bets, which failed. And so we're going to have to pay for that. We are, as human beings. And it's bigger than any other story you care to look at. I spent a lot of time doing climate change in my salaried career as a journalist. The financial crisis is totally related to climate change, and it's more important than climate change because it's the cause of climate change. You know, money and the financial system, the obsession with economic growth, which comes with that, That's what causes climate change, and what causes those things is the financial markets, the whole system of money, the whole system of what, to use a horribly complicated term, fractional reserve banking, taking in $6, lending out 100. The fact that people are on the street saying, we really don't like this stuff, that's really exciting. It's got, things that you might want to do better, but we need to understand this stuff. If we care at all about how we're governed, about how our lives are being run in our absence, then we need to understand this stuff. And there's some really good books and stuff to read about it.
Recommend a couple.
Mike Lewis, The Big Short, Simon Johnson, 13 Bankers, Matt Taibbi, Grifftopia. Read those, excellent books. And there's a few blogs out there that do good work on this as well. But it's hard work, it's complicated stuff, but it's like you need to understand it, or you need to talk to someone who understands it so that they can give you the basics, because it's really important.
Or hopefully we need to abolish it.
Yeah, sure, abolish it. What benefit do these people produce for humankind? Nurses do much better work than these people. Don't listen to any of what they say about, the wonders of financial sort of skullduggery for the economy as a whole. It's a disaster, and we're paying for it. So, get rid of it, sure, but it's not going to disappear overnight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just find it interesting that, if you talk to a person who loves capitalism, they'll talk about how all these things are created to make our world more efficient. And yet you look at countries, and many of these so-called first world countries, their number one sector of the economy is banking. And if it's taking that much capital, then surely it can't be efficient to have a society that has it as its main industries things that aren't productive at all. So let's tie this in to your work today. I understand you're working on a book about media and democracy.
That's true. It's a book. It's called Fraudcast News. It will be out in a couple of months' time, free to read on the internet. Why did I write it? I left Reuters 6 years ago. I needed to understand why I needed to leave. I knew I needed to leave, but I didn't have any sort of conceptual analysis of it. And I went through a process of looking at what democracy means. I went through a process of looking at what journalism means. And I thought it would be useful to explain that process to normal human beings, because I don't want my equivalent of a 21-year-old. I'm 45 now. If one 21-year-old who's thinking about going into journalism could read this book for free and not do what I did, then that would be great. I mean, we need to understand the importance of democracy, real democracy, not just occasional elections, and we need to understand journalism, why it's so important, and we need to get people doing it as well.
So, I'm getting the cue that we should quickly end the video. Thank you, Patrick, so much for joining me today. Once again, I'm Sakura Saunders. I'm reporting for Vision on TV.